Hello, eighth graders. Welcome to week 4. We are going to do something a little bit different this week because I wanted to make sure that we had time for group discussions for the speaking and listening standard. And I forgot that we had tests on Friday for like 3 or 4 Fridays in a row. So what we're going to do this week is we're going to have 2 discussions. Well, we're going to have a series of discussions, Tuesday and Wednesday. And then we're going to do some group work on Thursday and Friday. So what I wanted to do was give you guys some prep time because we're going to go back to the week 2 topic of the Mexican-American War, where we were looking at the point of view of the 2 videos, one from the Mexican perspective and one from the U.S. military perspective. We're also going to go back to last week's topic, which was slavery, expansion, in the Civil War, where we were looking at like the political, social, and economic aspects of slavery that contributed to the Civil War. And so your job is going to be to use the links to those 2 notes and return to those topics to refresh your memory on what you learned. Ask yourself the questions: what did you find most interesting or most confusing? What big questions do you wish were asked or answered? And then use those reflections to prepare for the class discussions below. So I've got 3 class discussions below. I'll tell you about this 3rd class discussion in just a second. So you should be prepared for all 3, and then you might not participate in all 3 discussions, but you should be prepared for all 3. And we'll start those tomorrow on Tuesday and Wednesday. What questions did you wish were? So use those reflections to prepare for the discussions below. So the 3rd discussion will be about how best to structure group work during our end of quarter project. So we are going to have an end of quarter project that's going to be a collaboration with Mr. Pixton's science class. And we're going to be looking at, we've been looking at westward migration of European Americans and how the United States expanded, all the way from the East Coast, New York and Boston and, Virginia, all the way out to the West Coast where we live. Turns out we live on the West Coast. And so what we're going to do is we're going to focus on the Seattle area and, the surrounding region. And we're going to look at what happened when groups of people came to the West Coast and how did they change the environment. And it's really pretty fascinating the ways in which people change the environment that we, drive around on and look at every day. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to have a map that's like, full of little day trips for you and your family, so that this summer, if you're driving around or you got a day and you're not sure what to do, you can go check out some of these places where there's been, a really big change to how things, look or how the river, works or, something like that. So that you can kind of have the history background. So the first step, though, is that we're going to need to be working in groups to do this. So this final discussion is for us just to start talking about how can we set up groups for project-based learning. The question in more detail is how can we set up group work or assignments or roles, or how can we set up technology to facilitate successful collaboration during our end of quarter project. And so some things that you can share is, stuff that you might have seen from other classes or questions that you have about technology, so that we can start to kind of have a conversation, and then we'll do a little bit of silly practice this week too. Alrighty, was I going to show you this last thing? Nope, not that one. This one. So here's the speaking and listening standard that we're going to be focusing on this week. And just to remind you, that the meeting is where you're preparing for the topic ahead of time. Oh, that's funny. It's kind of waving at you. You can pose questions, and you can connect ideas of several speakers to respond to other questions. So when you are in a discussion, you're coming prepared, right? But you're also thinking about what else was said before you, using some of these kind of sentence starters to kind of build off what other people are saying, or, kind of build off what someone else said before, but then ask a question to kind of push it forward. And so that's why in these discussion prep spots on your notes, it's good to have a couple of questions that you're curious about written down, as well as a couple of things to share. You don't need to fill out the green section because that's kind of just sentence starters for, while you're in the discussion, but it's good to kind of prep or practice those as well. All righty. Looking forward to working with you on this. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.